Well, the thing to remember from this game was the DeAndre Ayton alley-oop with like a second left there. It only took like zero point 0.1 seconds off the clock or something crazy. You had Devin Booker setting the screen around the free throw line just to slow down Zubats a little bit. And that play was nuts. That whole like last whatever, I mean, you had PG missing 2 free throws. You had the Beverly strip of Booker, which, that goes out of bounds. That goes back to the Clippers. There's controversy over should that be off of Booker if Beverly hit it, but it technically was still off of Booker. I don't know. Among all this, you've got the Clippers role players making threes to keep them in the game. Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Rondo, Beverly. You've got PG splitting the double team late there. I mean, there's a lot. But amongst all that, I do think the biggest thing was still Cameron Payne was just roasting the Clippers in this. And it wasn't too complex in how he was doing it. I mean, he was getting some help from, there were like 2 catch and shoot threes from Booker. One was just kind of a routine pass. One was Cam Payne was wide open at the top of the key. And Booker, again, was setting those like Spain pick and rolls, back screens, whatever you will, to help out on some of the screen plays. But really, it was just like pretty basic stuff where Cam Payne was just getting a screen from a big, and the Clippers just did kind of nothing to stop him. I mean, how many layups did he have with not much resistance in this game? It was a lot. I mean, sure, there was like that one floater bank shot where Boogie was kind of around him. He had a floater over Zubats, but still, man, I couldn't even tell you the amount of just drives to the rim he had without much pressure. I mean, there were at least 2 or 3 where he got it in transition. He just had like an in and out dribble and he got by Reggie Jackson or whatever. There was one where he got a screen from Ayton and Morris just kind of looked at him more than anything else. So that's got to be the first thing. I mean, you combine that with the amount of free throws they gave Booker late. I mean, Booker, of course, had that huge mid-ranger over Beverly where it seemed like he was floating in midair for a second before he finally shot it. But there was also the time where Terrence Mann fouled him on that three-pointer. Terrence Mann also fouled him when it was him and Zubats just kind of like surrounding him pretty much, but then he got Mann on a pump fake, so those are 5 points that Booker should not have had. I mean, maybe he could have still made that shot. The 3 did not go in, of course. So you combine that with the Cameron Payne stuff, and even so, the Clippers almost still could have won this if Paul George makes those 2 free throws, because then at that point it's like the Ayton lob. I mean, they would have needed a 3, so that wouldn't have mattered. So this game went from the Suns looking like it was going to be a comfortable win to the Clippers seeming like they were going to steal it and then finding a way to mess it up in the end anyway. The other things to think about, so the defense on Booker was actually pretty all right, besides those 2 plays and the mid-range. But even then, the mid-range on that last shot with like 20 seconds left or whatever, the defense wasn't horrible by Patrick Beverly. I mean, there was the time when Beverly blocked him on a mid-range. Beverly also forced a turnover out of Booker, well, 2, because he had the one where he stripped him as well, which whether that should be out on the Clippers or the Suns, whatever, I don't know. But I think the other thing was they kind of did what was kind of similar to what the Lakers did to Booker earlier in that series before the wheels fell off for the Lakers, which was you keep one guy on his back, you have the big drop a little bit, not a super lot. I would imagine the Suns will have adjustments for that, but it was interesting to see nonetheless. And as the Clippers small ball versus center thing is always a conversation. I mean, Ayton, he had definitely had his moments against the small lineup. I think a lot of it was in the first quarter, which I actually wasn't able to see because I was doing the Cade Cunningham video for the Pistons. But even as they have been big, Ayton had that hook shot over Zubats with like a minute and a half left, maybe 2 minutes after the screen from Payne. There was, of course, the lob play there. There was another lob play off of a Booker penetration. And when they did go small, when like Dario Saric was out there, Saric actually kind of killed him. He had like 2 scores at the basket. He also had a 3-pointer because they weren't guarding him at all. And maybe that one wasn't as much because of them being small, but clearly the small lineup is not just killing the Suns the way that it killed the Jazz and gave the Mavs a lot of problems as well. Of course, part of that is because Marcus Morris was not good in this game. The guy missed a whole bunch of shots. To talk about PG, because his game overall was not great, even outside of the 2 missed free throws. So they were doing some small screens, and there was that one pick and pop where he got a 3. And I don't actually remember all of his misses off the top of my head. I'm going to imagine a couple of them were just your classic contested threes that, whatever. But there were probably also some open looks that just simply didn't drop. The biggest thing with PG to me is that they just keep giving him some sort of ball movement as opposed to just an ISO every single time. Like, yeah, I know if he's really feeling it, then you're going to take the ISOs, but especially in a game like this, it would be nice to have some sort of like screen action or anything off the ball to get him going a little bit more. I feel like it was a lot of Bridges or Crowder on PG, which that makes the most sense for the Suns. So yeah, now the Clippers are down 2-0 again. Chris Paul could be back for Game 3. Should they go all in on the small lineup? I mean, if Ayton and Saric and these guys are going to kill you for going small, then it's probably not going to work. I mean, if you're able to switch everything, then that could help on the pain drives and all that. But again, if you're just going to get killed on offensive boards and you're just going to give a bunch of shots around the basket, then it doesn't really matter if you're going to trade off for more perimeter defense. I think this is another thing, too, with the Clippers' offense. It's like they got so good at playing without a center that they're just kind of normal now when they have to go with a big. And, like, sure, Zubats is good, and it's not like they got killed. I mean, obviously they could have won this game, but it just makes them a little easier to game plan against because it's like, oh, now the spacing isn't as good around the rim, and the rim protection for the other team's a little better because there's a bigger guy out there. And these are basic basketball things, but this was what made the Clippers so good the last two rounds, is they just freaked teams out by going small, and they might not be able to do it against this Phoenix team. Are there any other adjustments I can think of? Like, does a zone defense work at all on this against this Suns team? I think with Chris Paul, no. Without CP, maybe it could have been a thing, but at the same time, it's understandable not to go to it too often. Is it crazy to believe that double teaming campaign would have been the move? I mean, this Phoenix team is loaded with shooters, and Ayton can make a play at the rim if you give him a couple feet of space. I mean, the one play I remember from Game 1 was they doubled Booker, and then Ayton threw a pass without even thinking about it right to Torrey Craig, who was wide open for three, and that went in. And yeah, you'll live with Torrey Craig open three-pointers. He airballed one tonight. But still, the Suns, they just kind of know what to do at all times. I mean, even without Chris Paul out there, the passing is still awesome. I mean, that three that Bridges missed, it was immediate. It was like, oh, they doubled Booker to Crowder, right to Bridges, open three, it didn't go in. But they're just really, really good at knowing the right plays. So it's tough to just bring two to the ball all the time. It helps because they have so many shooters and the spacing is always good as well. I don't know, man. I mean, if the Clippers, if they can't switch everything in their small lineup, and they can't double on the ball, at that point it's like you're probably just going to have to find one guy to leave open, and I guess it's Crowder. But even then, what was he in Game 1? 3 for 7 from outside? I don't know what he was from 3 in this one. I know he had that one really good cut play where they did leave him open. So it's tough. It's really tough, and, well, going down 2-0, not ideal.